babies. It's that time again. Oh yeah. Gorgeous day. The beginning of the vacation. Making some good changes. I'm losing weight. Feeling good. Looking for what the Lord has for us today. I think it's good to put ourselves in the mind frame of working together instead of what am I doing today? What are we doing today? Oh yeah, baby. We need to stay connected. Because it helps us to work as one instead of isolated and trying to deal with, things all on your own. No, we are in the company of many lovers of the Lord. Oh yeah. That's who we are, and that's what we do, baby. So, speaking of us, I'm hoping you're doing well. I'm always thinking about you. I want to see you exceed your own expectations, which is sufficient. I know it says in the Bible we can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's not exactly true. What it really should say is we can exceed expectations through Christ who strengthens us. Because we all have our limits, and it's a disservice to God to say, oh, if I just put my mind to it, I can make this happen, or God will make this happen. No. I'm sure you can think of things in your life where there are limits. Like, what are you good at? And what are you not so good at? And are you going to make a career out of something that you don't do well? Not likely. So let's get serious, people. Sometimes people say things in a way just to, as a point of emphasis that I would never take away, but I know to be true, is that God can open up things and change our character and create circumstances, all that just go way beyond what we might expect. That we know. If I started earlier in my life practicing a layup, would I ever make it to the NBA? No. That's something I would never be able to do. And it's okay. In fact, it's good to know your limits. As a special ed teacher, I would never tell, a kid, you can do whatever you set your mind to. Some kids who just will never go to college. They just don't have the skills. They can't develop them. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the interest. They don't have the motivation. And they're not suited for it. They're suited for something, more hands-on, getting right into, a vocational life or career that makes sense to them. Oh yeah, baby. We need to do that for each other. You know, we're not only doing God a disservice, we do each other a great disservice to think we can do whatever we set our minds to, because, man, talk about setting somebody up for failure, right? And disappointment and trauma and tragedy is for them to be thinking how things are going to eventually develop, because that's what their dream is. Paradoxically, we have Paul saying that he glories in his infirmities and his weaknesses, because when he can recognize how limited he is, it's in those times where we can experience how powerful God can be. And you might say, well, see, you just contradicted yourself. No, pay attention to the language, honey. When you're acknowledging your limitations, it's then that you are best positioned to receive the strength and power of God in you to move in ways you can't do on your own. But nowhere in that language does it say you can do anything you set your mind to. No. No. In fact, I think it's that kind of foolish thinking which is the worst kind of evangelism you could imagine. You know, atheists are well within their right minds and their rights, so to speak, to reject a religion and or a God who teaches foolish things and makes his followers look foolish in the world by saying such ridiculous things. Again, that does not mean God will not make us look foolish. No, that's the cross itself was considered foolish. You know, no one saw Jesus bloodied and destroyed on a torturous cross and thought, victory is finally ours. No, because they didn't have the revelation of what spiritually was going on. But just because God wants to use foolish things to confound the wise doesn't mean he wants us to live foolishly. You know, people might think you're foolish by your faith in Jesus. But God doesn't want us to be a mockery because we go around telling each other, you just keep holding on to that. You just keep holding on to that and it will happen. No, what if it's not God's will? What are you holding on to? You're holding on to yourself. There's no honor in that. So that's why it's good to be empty, weak, acknowledging our limitations, and let God and his presence in us live out right living, right thinking, right behaviors. Oh, yeah.